Get your name on this list over here, please.
We're gonna have Ryan address
Where's Brady?
the information he has.
Okay. He's ready. We need.
Can you stand up, please? Stand up on the deal.
For the original credentials report that was passed at the convention, we would need to review video evidence to find out if this credentials report was in fact passed appropriately according to proper procedure, because there are questions as to whether or not that was the case. If that is the case, we could not continue business of this convention because we would not have a credentialed role from the original convention in order to continue business. So then we would need to continue business under a new role, and that would the difference is whether we continue business under a new convention or under the previous convention's role. And I would submit that we would need to review some video evidence to find out if in fact the original role was certified with the original credentials committee report.
I got a point of information on that.
Please state your point.
Okay, it was not verified. It was not verified according to the convention rules. So the delegate count that they said was good is wrong.
That's right.
We never certified
It was
the
never
revised
certified.
credential report.
It was never certified.
Never.
Same thing here.
My point of information,
6 times after the last.
And it was never
Hold on, one at a
certified.
time, guys.
Mr. Chair, it was a stated opinion of the previous chair of credentials that the list was compromised, its integrity was compromised, and so I would move that it is not, and we never voted on the revised version.
Right.
So it cannot stand.
Right. So are you moving to reconsider the credentials?
I would move to strike any previously voted on credential reports and resubmit the credentials from this convention.
Right.
Friendly amendment. In as much as your motion suggests that all the credentials report is invalid, I would suggest that without the proper credentials, all business of the convention up to this point would also be invalid.
Yes.
And therefore, would be all business conducted in this convention within the building up to this moment,
Without proper
without proper credentials being established.
Credentials was not established.
The admission of the chair credentials.
admission of the chair of credentials that they
So our
numbers were incorrect and compromised.
Okay.
We created.
So on the basis that the credentials role itself was improper.
The fact that she got up and said our credentials are no good. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have video of this. Point, state your point.
What constitutes certification of the credentials of the convention?
Okay, the point of information is a question of what constitutes the certification of the credentials. And I would defer to parliamentarian for an opinion.
That would be the vote of the convention.
Okay, the parliamentarian advised me that it would be the vote of the convention.
Only within the rules.
Within the rules of the party.
Point of information that I still have access to the actual registration that we did this morning. So if there's any credentials in question, I can make that legitimate based on what we did this morning. The credentials report that was printed from their database.
Okay, well taken. State your point.
Point of information was, even though the roll call wasn't taking place for any of the stuff that was done, it can't be a majority vote if it is stood up or said out loud, but that itself has to be voted upon. That you can stand up and the majority will be taken. And that was never the case. It was always appointed as that was a rule. And that's not a rule. Especially when we made the rules that it has to be done by roll call. So the only one that actually stuck as a rule is this sheet. That's all we have.
Yeah, but I would also say that if the credentials weren't certified correctly and admitted by the credentials chairman, then none of the business, like you said, would be correct at that point. So,
There is a motion on the floor.
My
Point of order,
has to do
Mr.
with
Chairman.
Credential delegates. I believe we have people on the list that do not have the badges. If so, we're going to have to do a recount on anybody that's on the list that's not credentials. If we're going to accept this as our credentials.
the chairman asked for everybody to count that had credentials.
But can we verify what that meant?
Well, that would be up to each county chairman to have done so properly.
So should it
Or delegation chairman.
Okay. Say your point. Point of
order, Mr. Chairman, for documenting sake.
Okay, we're saying you're making a premise that credentials from the last meeting was valid. Therefore, actions of the last week were invalid. Okay, well, all right. If that's true, then we base the credentials for this meeting on the credentials of the last.
No.
Not if they're
No,
invalid.
exactly. We actually said who's here with credentials. These people got their credentials from the last.
Credentials roll up. Credentials roll up from county and district.
Yeah. But if you invalidate them, then
Mr. Chairman.
I have a point of order that has preceded all other orders.
Say your point.
I move that we put the camera in front of anyone making any motions or any arguments for documenting sake. We need to have a clear and concise documentation of what's been said and discussed, so I just like to put that out there.
We do have a motion on the floor, and I'd love to entertain your motions just after this
Point
one.
of information, please restate the motion.
Okay, the motion is to, please restate your motion, Toby.
My motion, and I'll let Richard add the amendment again, is that we strike the business from this day and strike the credentialing from the previous convention as it was stated on camera and at that convention that the credentials were invalid and that we never had the ability to vote on the revised credentialing.
Again, a friendly amendment.
And
To suggest
its report.
a previous convention rather than a continuation thereof is to invalidate to some degree our current actions. What I believe your intention is to suggest is that the business of that convention was never properly carried forth because of the failure to accept credentials properly, and from that then it is proper for us to carry forth and create that original necessary thing, which is to accept credentials.
Correct.
Now, accepting credentials would not infer a piece of paper we hold. This was properly the work of the Credentials Committee, whose report is yet to be accepted by this same convention, which has moved from one part of this property to another.
Yes. I'll second that motion.
So can you state your motion as amended?
yes. Restate as amended?
Yes. It's got nothing
Might I suggest?
Yes.
Order.
Okay. His motion is to strike all actions of the convention up until the time in which the convention moved its location to the outdoors, due to the fact the credentials were never properly ratified by the convention, and thus no business would be proper.
Okay, I'm going to restate the question for everybody that can hear me. There's a motion to strike all business that has conducted up to the point that we moved outdoors due to the fact that the credentials report was never properly certified or ratified or adopted by the convention.
Point of information.
Point of information, state your point.
Are we arguing that the credentials report was never accepted by the convention, or that the credentials report was accepted but is erroneous? Those seem to be two different things to me.
The motion entails that the credentials report was never certified or ratified as amended after they amended it 6 times.
Yes.
So they amended it on the fly without a motion to actually.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Yes, they did.
But in that case, would it not be simply those amendments that would be invalid, and then you would roll back to the credentials report that was originally accepted?
There was not a motion to accept a portion of credentialing that smaller group, and then that would have been proper to say, okay, we've got 1,500
So it wasn't
people here.
divided properly.
It wasn't divided. It was one continuing and evolving credentials report, the final evolution thereof having never been accepted.
And I have one more point of information. If in fact the credentials report was invalid, why is it necessary to strike the business of the convention? Because that business, it simply was not conducted if there was not a proper permanent roll of delegates in presence.
The premise would be to strike from the record business that was indeed not properly conducted.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and it has been seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye! All those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Do you have a